You know, I was just in the chat listening to that melody, and the last couple of times I've done this, it's caught me off guard. I'm kind of really enjoying it, thinking there's um, another round or another chorus, whatever it is. We're going to just mull things over about the sun. And yes, I can see the chat, but I won't be looking at it all of the time because sometimes it really is distracting. Some of you guys have observations and comments that are really gripping, and then what I was thinking is just gone, and then it takes me forever to get it back. Don't forget, my mind is weak. So here I go, having just said that, looking at the comment from Cosmic Surfer. Right, yes. Okay, so thoughts about the sun. Don't drive yourself crazy trying to think or trying to figure out what the sun is. Okay? Like seriously, I know all of the pondlings, flatlings, realists, earthlings, human beings, people, looking at this question, the vast majority of you have pondered, the heck is it? How does it work? What is it? And I'm urging you, don't drive yourselves crazy, don't burn yourselves out, don't reach a point of frustration where you give up, because the reason I've called this if the sun is not a big distant fiery ball, then what is it? It's this. Stay with me. In the old days, some of the most advanced civilizations used to describe the sun as being ferried across the sky by a chariot. Others by a crow. Others by a ship being sailed by a god of some type. The reason they all said those things, and we're talking societies, civilizations that could build pyramids and establish things like the Saros cycle, not, more primitive ancient civilizations. We're talking technologically advanced. And I kind of paused then when I said primitive because, we think of the Aboriginals of Australia as primitive, but you look at their actual history and go, maybe it's not primitive. Maybe it's just a very different attitude to life. Maybe it's a more advanced attitude to life. Maybe the anthropomorphism they engage with the stars and stories is more apropos than our current ideas about the constellations. But never mind that. Back to the sun being ferried across the sky by chariots, ships, a crow, whole series of different systems. Okay? The reason those people said that is that they hadn't figured out what the sun is. Okay. Back then, people would have questioned, would have said, how do you know it's on a chariot? Can you check if it's on a chariot or a ship? And the scientists would have said, well, what else could it be? Now, back then, skeptics might have said, Well, you could say anything, because we can't go up there and check, right? And isn't that exactly the situation we have now? It's a big, distant, fiery ball. How do you know? Well, what else could it be? Okay, well, we can't go up there and check. And now that people can actually go up in flying things or with balloons, floating, or drones or whatever, now that it can be studied. It's like, oh dear, it looks like the matrix that goes along with your thoughts of it being a big, fiery, distant ball break down. It breaks down when you observe it from what would be a much higher altitude, higher than the altitudes that people would have studied it back in the days when they thought it was ferried across by a chariot. So in the same way that back then, nobody could verify whether or not it was a chariot or a ship or a crow, way back then, they couldn't verify that. But they still established things that were very correct, including the Saros cycle. Now we have just a different telling of the same story, which is, it's a thing you can't check. You can't check what it really is. We say it's a big distant ball. Some flat earthers say it's a small closed ball. I said, no, it isn't. It's not either of those things. How do you know, Antonio? Process of elimination. It can't be either of those things. Just like it can't be being ferried by a chariot or a crow or on a ship. Okay, so we're going to look at some video to see about our thoughts about the sun. Okay, so we look at the sun. We know how it behaves. We're very familiar with it. Okay, right. We know the azimuth, the elevation. We know how it changes with your latitude. We know how it depends. It's dependent on time for its arrival and its location in the sky. Great. Other than that, physicists, astrophysicists have determined what frequencies emanate from the sun. They've determined a whole series of different things. What the sun actually is, they still don't know. This is why there's debate between the electric universe and the atomic universe. And there really is debate with Dr. Robitaille pretty much saying, no, you're all wrong, and the actual science says you're wrong. You're working on theory and fable, and we're working on science. The science closely reflects what we say. This is what the electric universe people say. So you should drop your theory and adopt ours. And the other guy said, no, you can't prove it because you can't go there and test. Same as the guy saying it's a chariot. But there's things that we can do that can help us understand how it behaves the way it behaves. And by understanding how it behaves, understand first why we can't fully understand what it is, and two, understand why none of the other people can figure it out either. So we're going to watch some video right now. This video, and I'm going to ask you to just play along with, well, what I'm going to discuss. Just give me a second. Right. Hopefully everything is showing fine. My last video, for some reason, it doesn't matter the reason, but it wasn't that I clicked something wrong, but instead my display shifted. So I'm going to keep an eye on what's actually going out while I'm showing this, because, like I said, it showed a screen. I hadn't asked it to show. Where is the other Dagna bit? Oh, maybe this time it was my fault. I might have eliminated the screen I had opened earlier. Okay, it doesn't matter. I know that it's going out, and I will open a screen to look at the chat as soon as I finish with this. Just play along. Pretend you're in the car that's filming this rainbow. Okay? This shouldn't be beyond the grasp of any globe earther watching this. Any globeling. You too should be able to keep up with what I'm going to describe and explain. So, we're in a car and there's a rainbow ahead. And as you watch, oh, it gets to a point where it really seems like the rainbow is reaching the car ahead. You'll note the car ahead is moving. The car in which we're situated is moving, and so does the rainbow appear to be moving. But is it really moving? Is the rainbow really moving? It most certainly does appear to be moving, you know, given that the car in front is moving. It looks like the rainbow is hitting the car in front, or, you know, illuminating the car in front. The car in front is moving, and therefore the rainbow is also moving with the car, and the conclusion that the rainbow is moving would be, well, a valid conclusion. Unless you consider things that make that conclusion invalid, like, we go back to the beginning, the fact that from this point of view, the rainbow is still visible. So for all of that journey, this car, at no point does this car go through the rainbow. Okay, we're going to watch again. Now pretend that the car you're in has stopped on the road. It has just stopped. It doesn't care about the cyclists and the motorists behind it. It's just stopped. And it's letting the car ahead just travel. From the point of view of the car that's stationary, that's the rainbow. And the car in front will just appear to go in the direction of the rainbow. But because we're not moving, we would assume that the rainbow is also not moving. And when it gets to the point that the car in front isn't diffused by the light of the rainbow, well, we just, you know, we give up thinking about illumination and locations of things like rainbows and cars. So now we get going and we go, hot diggity, looks like the rainbow moves when we move, doesn't move when we don't move. Even to the point right now where it looks like it's actually illuminating the car. It isn't, it's just a bit more spray from the car. Now imagine that the rainbow is not a rainbow, but is instead the sun. Let's imagine that right above that car is the setting sun. It behaves the same. As we're moving, following the car in front, the sun appears to move. And not only that, but I'm going to go back in the video. At this point, and the rest of the point of this journey, which is a very straight road, while you're seeing the rainbow on top of the car in front, apparently, or perhaps just in front of the car in front, let's pretend it's on top. Let's pretend it's landing on the roof. Let's pretend that's the location of the sun. Like we pretend we can conceive of the location of the sun, which we can't. We can't even conceive of the location of this very rainbow. Where is this rainbow? It's not really anywhere, is it? Now, as we're traveling, we see the rainbow apparently above that car. And as we go on our journey, the whole time, there's a car behind us too. And to that car, the rainbow is above ours. What's the rainbow? It's an electromagnetic phenomenon. What's the sun? An electromagnetic phenomenon. What's the moon and the rest of the celestial lights? Electromagnetic phenomena. So if we think that we can say, we know enough about electromagnetism to determine that they are in this location, we're wrong. If our studies into electromagnetism have told us that we can determine the location to the sun, the moon, or a rainbow, we don't understand electromagnetism very well. I'm going to play that some more. So when you sit and you try to think, what is this rainbow? How does it illuminate? How does it behave? How does it scroll across? What drives it? How does it present itself the way it does? When you ask all of those questions and more, don't think that you're dense or stupid or that your flat earth view is tricking you into false ideas, because neither the globe earth view nor any of the ancient views led them to anything more robust than ideas. no proofs, no demonstrable evidence, just ideas. A chariot ferrying it across the sky, a ship, a crow, and a whole bunch of other ideas. This is part of the reason that since day one in my adventure in this flat earth world, I've been saying the best way to study the sun is by studying and thinking about the rainbow. Because the rainbow is a phenomenon of the atmosphere which we see above the ground, like we see the sun and the moon. The rainbow, we can see the rainbow bisected. I'm not going to look for video now, but actually I'll let it play. But we can see the rainbow bisected by the horizon and then rise up in elevation and see that rainbow rise up too. Remember, I just said we can see a rainbow bisected by the horizon, and as we rise up in elevation, the rainbow rises too, to the point that it is no longer bisected with the horizon or by the horizon. What else does this? The sun and the moon. We can have the sun bisected by the horizon, and as we rise in elevation, so does the sun. The same with the moon. So the rainbow, the sun and the moon behave the same way. Why would we think if one electromagnetic phenomenon behaves one way, that the other two are not the same type of electromagnetic phenomena? Why would we think that? Why would we think it behaves the same as a rainbow in all of these respects, but it must be nothing like a rainbow? Why? Because it moves. I've just shown that this rainbow that appears to be moving isn't even moving. So why would we do that? Why would we sit and think about this motion? I'll tell you why. Because we inherited the idea of the sun being scrolled across the sky on a ship by a crow or on a chariot, and reverse that relationship to the sun being stationary and also rotating under it with the globe. It's silly. You don't actually, and the truth is, you don't actually need to know what the sun is in order to arrive at anything that's actually valid in the realm of existence and reality. We know because the guys that compiled the Sarah cycle didn't think the sun was a big distant fiery ball. They thought it was on a chariot. Oh, I think it was a ship. But in any case, they established valid data even though they had no idea what the sun was. Well, no, wait, they did have ideas, but they were probably completely invalid. So you don't need to know. Like, if somebody said, what is the rainbow? If you say anything other than its actual description, well, it's an arc with various different colours. Anything else you say regarding its location, where it is, how big or small it is, how distant it is, all of those things are needless and false. One more time, and then I'm going to try to open the window I accidentally closed. And then I'm going to come into the chat and hash things out with you guys a bit more. Yeah, whilst doing that, yeah. Okay, wait a second. There I am. I can't believe that just as I was saying that in my last hangout, something bizarre happened with the actual display that had nothing to do with me hitting any key, which when I saw the video I thought, hey, what the heck is this white screen all of a sudden? Why has it shifted to this other window? I have no idea, but now I can actually open the window with the chat, like purposely, and have a good look. Let's see. Yeah. So this video was, the reason I made this video is I was chatting with somebody on Facebook, Donald, and we were hashing things out. We were just discussing what the sun is, how it behaves. And I've been meaning to, sorry, I'm still trying to open the window. Oh, let me see. Yes, that's it. I've got it. It was a case of reopening last closed window. Okay, now I can close all of the other distracting windows that I opened. So we were discussing the sun and how it presents itself, and how is it that it's visible between the tropics while visible south of Sydney, say. And it's like when we think, right, I want to be able to visualize it. It's like, okay, well, if you're going to try to visualize the sun, which none of the ancients and none of the current, none of the biblical prophets knew what it was, okay? So don't think you're a dumbass for not knowing. None of the ancient scientists, none of the modern scientists know. Not even Eric Dollard, okay? Don't think you're foolish for not knowing, for not figuring it out. So we still have this tendency to want to visualize. It's like, okay, visualize the rainbow that you just saw in the video. Visualize it, because what we do is we don't think, right, if I was in location X, how would the sun behave? Because it's easy. We know, well, depending on your latitude, it will go like that, or it will go like that, depending north or south. And higher or lower, depending on the time of the year or your relative location, your latitude. That's easy. That's not what we mean by trying to visualize. We mean we want to see what actions are driving it, what is causing it to move. And we try to do so from a remote point of view as an ideal observer. This is the habit that we have. We have this habit of thinking that we can idealize from the perspective of an ideal observer. Like, okay, if you're going to try to visualize from the perspective of an ideal observer, practice by visualizing the rainbow. Because what we do is we go to this top-down view, which all these half-wit flat earthers have made models on, going, well, the sun does this. Like, does it really? Dumbass. Have you just decided you weren't going to address any of those things that say that this model is wrong? What's wrong with you? What are you doing? Are you doing this on purpose? Are you being dense on purpose? Or is it a mistake? If it's a mistake, say it's a mistake and stop promoting it. Stop going on about it. But don't carry on. But that's what we do. We try to visualize from above. We imagine ideal observer, God's eye point of view, or whatever, bird's eye point of ISS point of view, looking down, and how we would see it. Okay, do the same first from lower elevation if you choose, with a rainbow. Visualize the rainbow over that road that you just saw, knowing that as it appears to travel, as you move along, it also appears to be stationary from here as the car in front moves along, as you move along, as anything else moves, it appears to be stationary. So visualize that first. Practice your ideal observer perspective. See what it shows you. And then you'll see, oh, that's interesting. The closest approximation is that it's like some kind of tube or wide filament. But wait, if you move along the tube, it appears to be a tube. But if you move perpendicular to the tube or parallel to the tube, then the tube moves with you. That's interesting. And it's the same with the sun. So don't fool yourselves. Don't let yourselves have your your ideal observer perspective molded by the idea of a small local sun making circles between the tropics, which is false, or a big distant sun. Don't let it happen. If you're going to let that happen, you might as well think, well, it's a little sword on the back of a chariot, which is what the ancients did. It's natural to want to know what the heck that thing is. How does it be? What drives it to behave the way it behaves? It's natural. We're a curious species. We want to know how things work. So don't flog yourself for asking the question and not arriving at conclusive answers. Don't flog yourself for not knowing how to approach the question in the first place. Don't flog yourself for giving up and saying, I'm not even going to bother. I'm just going to concentrate on the flatness, which is a completely valid thing to do. You don't have to question the same things as other people. But most of all, don't think that if you don't arrive at a good answer, nobody will. Or if you don't arrive at a good answer, somebody else will and you'll be wrong. Like, stop seeing the world that way. None of us know whether somebody will arrive at a completely absolute correct perspective of the sun. None of us. The best that I can do is to imagine it being like on a warped Coilux lamp. The Coilux lamp that I've shown before, that Gandhi passed me, that I've shown lots of times, that has this sword, and as he moves, the sun moves. They've made another one, by the way, with the moon, and the moon behaves the same. The best I can do is imagine that I know how that's constructed. I only know what the guy has explained, and imagine how it would behave if it was warped in a way that is specific to how it presents itself in the real world. But all of this is imagination and ideas about how things might behave. That's all it is, and that's anything anyone has. No matter who you ask, they're not going to have, likely, a better explanation to the most vague explanation, which is, it's an electromagnetic phenomenon like the rainbow, and there you go. Really? Now I'm going to go into the chat, see how you're all doing. If I don't lose it again. What's this? Right. Oh, right. So, yes, Sergey updated his Angel Fire 451. I hope that was good. I hope you enjoyed that. Sergey fixed some errors in the video, his video that I was promoting in my last live stream. He found some errors, or somebody highlighted some errors to him. He corrected those errors and re-uploaded the video. So go and see that video, because it's saying, look, the sun, in respect or relative to the earth and what it does in the sky, you know, the Analemma, it's not quite so regimented as the physicists would like to make it out to be. Just like they try to make out like the equinox is quite a regimented thing, and it isn't really, is it? So, especially if you combine, this is a good one, the equinox with the leap years. Plus, I saw recently, by the way, that Wolfie is still going on about the equinox proving the globe Earth. Like, no, it doesn't prove the globe Earth. It disproves the globe Earth. You just don't understand. Your globe Earth says it should happen across all latitudes on the same day or the same 24-hour period, or even 48-hour period if you want to be very, what's the word, relaxed about it. But it doesn't. Weeks and weeks pass between the equinox in one location and the equinox in another location. But your globe says it happens when the axis is so, and all of the latitudes rotate the longitudes rotate like this, all the latitude, all of them have it east and setting west. No, that doesn't happen in the real world. And if you stop to look, you'll say, huh, looks like the real world is not a globe rotating under a sun with its axis angled like this. And the leap years show something even more bizarre. So please go and see Sergey's video. Give him a thumbs up. Right, I'm now looking in the chat. Oh, right, so Angel Fire Rise. But did the ancients know the sun is a nexus prismatic glare? Emphasize on glare. I genuinely, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. It's likely that at least some of them arrived at that conclusion and were happy with that conclusion. It's, you say a prismatic glare, I say a holoprismatic glare. And I say holoprismatic because it contains the same information everywhere, like a hologram. But that's like splitting hairs. Let's see. If the glare sun is a band or wave spanning the tropics, we may only see the singular sun in our particular location. Yes, we do see. That is what we see. When it is in the entire band, same with the rainbow. Yes, yes. Okay, so shouldn't we be discussing how glares behave? Sorry, he adds. I have done in the past. I made a series of videos about it in my previous channel, in fact. So we can go over it quickly now. If you have a glare here, from this point of view, it means it's a glare on something. Something's generating that glare. Okay, it could be a bubble. It could be a change in temperature, a change of atmospheric condition. It could be a whole series of things that are presenting the glare right there from your perspective. You might assume, like with the rainbow, that there is something right there because that's where it's appears to be from your perspective. But if you shift perspective, the glare shifts. I'm doing this on my hand, by the way. So as you shift perspective, so does the glare. So you're still none the wiser. It's still a conclusion. There's a glare there, and we can't really determine where it is. Chris Pinder Effie. Looking good, Antonio. I'm charmed. Thank you. Sergey, I just told you. Yes, sorry, I just told you. He says, hello, Antonio, guys. Thanks for mentioning. I was just going to say, I just told them about your video. Yeah. Yeah, it's... let's see. You know how when globe earthers discuss or debate with flat earthers, the globe earthers have a variety of go-to responses. Like, your model can't explain the azimuth of the sun. Like, wait, whose model? Mine does. How does mine? By simply reporting what the azimuth is. Your model, this is the counter, your model can't explain the equinoxes happening at a whole series of different weeks instead of on the same day. Care to explain? But they always shy away from an explanation. You see, their explanation really breaks down. Their explanation goes like this. When the sun is angled, when the Earth's axis, and I'm going to exaggerate for ease of illustration, if you're the sun, when the Earth's axis is pointing like this, the sun is closest to the northern hemisphere, and it's the summer in the north, and the winter in the south. The day goes like this. When this is round the other side of the sun, according to their model, we turn, and it would be like this. The south would have the sun highest in the sky. It would be the southern summer. Okay. And between those two extremes, you have this halfway point where the axis is like this or like this in respect to the sun or relative to the sun. But what's important is that neither the top nor the bottom of the globe is closest or more distant from the sun. Okay? In which case, the equinox should happen all across the latitudes on the same day. It isn't the case that it should happen on some latitudes here on one day and weeks later over here, because this is a fixed axis. It's not a bendy axis where if you bend it like this, this is now in agreement with the sun, but this quite isn't. So we'll have to wait a while until this reaches that same orientation in respect to the sun. And if you remember, I made a video about the equinox showing the comment, the description on time and date, which literally defined the Earth's axis as two spinning tops, one atop another. They do this to explain why at some point the equinox happens around the equator and way later at the tropics, and then way later at the higher latitudes, and the other way around. Like they literally described it like two spinning tops atop one another. If you go and check now, it's gone. That description's gone. They've deleted that. It caused too much trouble to them. But the fact that they had it there in the first place tells you their model is just a theory. They know it's just a theory, and it addresses sufficiently well for the not very astute the phenomena we see in the world. In the same way that in the old days, saying that the sun was ferried across the sky by a chariot was good enough for the not very astute back then. All they have to do is have a theory that's good enough for the not very bright. And it's best if you can show it with cartoons and with balls. Go, look, it's like this. Do you understand a ball? Do you understand ball? Yeah? Do you understand ball turning? Yeah? It's like the sun. Like, oh, it's that simple, is it? Yeah. Can I spin a rainbow? Can you just go over a rainbow again on this ball? No, lesson's over. Quick, grab your things. And that's how it goes. Either that or... And that's how it goes. Anyway, right. I'm scrolling through the chat, looking at people's comments. Okay, so Angel Fire 451, you're going to love my book. I'm not going to read your comment. There's people in the chat, obviously, who can read the comment, and people watching this video who might read the comment. But you're going to love my book. Yes. Right, I'm just going to quickly scroll. Greetings to the 90 viewers. That's pretty good for a channel with 3,000 subs. Thank you very much. So let me just reiterate. If you're trying to figure out what the sun is, don't feel disappointed for not figuring it out, because you're not the only one. There isn't a prophet, not Job, no prophet from any religious text, no ancient religion, none of them have ever been able to correctly describe what the sun is. None of them. None of the sciences, none of the philosophies have been able to describe what the sun is. Not Einstein, even though you know my attitude towards Einstein, or my opinion, not Hawking. No physicist in the modern era has been able to describe what the sun is or demonstrate what the sun is, and none of the ancient cultures either. So don't think that you're stupid for becoming like Einstein or like Hawking or like any of the other guys. At least you weren't as dense as Einstein, though. By the way, and I'm going to say this right now, I think it's seriously unfair to use a cripple as the voice, as the mouthpiece for physics, having previously used a intellectually retarded guy as a mouthpiece for physics, as a puppet for physics. I think there's definitely something dark about the nature of humanity, if that's what people have been doing, and that is what people have been doing. But we know that there are actually dark elements to humanity. We know there's war, we know murders happen and horrible things happen at the hands and intentionally by humans. We know this. Whether there's a baddie in the background directing those things, I don't know. But the dark things happen, yeah, for sure. That mascots have been used, and by the way, they've been used consistently all throughout the ages. At one point, Hermes Trismegistus was used as the mouthpiece. Well, according to Hermes, what's going on is this. Oh, and by the way, just for anybody who's looked into Madame Blavatsky. Madame Blavatsky was a fraud. That's right. I've been listening to talks and to some of the audiobooks of Madame Blavatsky. What a crock of shit. What a complete bunch of bullshit. Now, there have been wise people born and who have lived on this earth throughout the ages, and they have all posited little bits of wisdom and knowledge into the collective consciousness, some of which has been kind of taken and put aside by interested parties so that people don't have access to it, but a lot of it has remained out there. When somebody comes along and takes some of the wisdom, hobbles it together and says that they found it by engaging with a specialist kind of meditative thinking that was taught to them by some gurus, if you believe that, then good luck to you. But if the best thing to do would be to go, let's see if this is true, and listen. And this is where one of the brilliant things about the flat earth, the truth about the shape of the earth, it lets you see who's full of shit. Because when somebody like that says, and that's how the universe made a sphere Earth, you go, oh, really? Well, if you're wrong about that, what else are you wrong about? And that's what it is. Madame Blavatsky, this is the as above, so below person, the Theosophist Society. As above, so below. First, that's a corruption of the original, which was that which is above is from below, and that which is below is from above. It's not the same thing. According to that, a splattered egg on a surface has splattered because it fell from above. Blah. That doesn't mean that because there's a splattered egg here, there's a splattered egg there. It's a crock of shit, folks. So anybody who tells you about Madame Blavatsky being really great, it's like, really? You moron. Tell them they're a moron. Say, you're a moron. You're a moron. Anyway. Gary Waybenga, Wolfie doesn't like it when I point out to him that the sun doesn't rise at 90 degrees and set at 270 on the same day for me as it does for him. Oh, yes, Gary, I'm sure he really doesn't like it. And this is where you, from my point of view, you arrive at this conclusion. Okay, there are globings who are convinced that their model is correct. Okay, let's say that they're not Quislings, they're not dishonest. They are convinced that their model is correct, and they discuss it like it's correct, and they try to tell other people about its correctness. Now, let's say that Wolfie was one of those who believes it's correct, and along comes Gary or me and says, hey, Do you want to look again at the equinox? With that mind, that the standard model is correct, looking at the equinox is a problem. Say, what the hell? It's the same refraction everywhere on Earth. There's no, the sun is rising more south or more north from these latitudes on the day of the equinox. There isn't any of that going on. There's on their globe. It's like, wow, you'd have to have very consistent differences in climate for that to be going on. And it looks like those differences are not so consistent. It looks like instead the sun presents itself in a way that's not quite as regimented as your globe demands. And that's what some of us say to globelings. Study your model properly and you will see it does not actually correspond to reality. It doesn't correspond to reality. Rob Durham, a flat earther, spent a long time modelling to 12 decimal places the globe Earth, the sun and the moon, with all of the distances on AutoCAD, all of the figures given by NASA and the not the Royal Observatory, the US Naval Observatory, all of the data. And when he compiled it, it was wrong. The sun wasn't where it should be in the sky, because the sun is generally an approximation. And the way people try to disguise flaws in their models is by dismissing approximations, by maybe hinting at them or even saying it's an approximation because of things, but it's very solid when you think of the latitudes and longitudes. You go, hey, the latitudes and longitudes are post hoc. They are a posteriori. They're not made by the sun. The sun happens, and depending on what the sun is doing where you are, you set a stake and say, this is our location based on the model. Change the model and you have a different situation, but you'll have the same phenomena. Because if the shadow is pointing northeast, then the sun is southwest, that's it. But when you ask people like Wolfie to look at the equinox, they're not happy about it. And I understand why. Because when you take away the foundations of a worldview, the person whose worldview is being destabilized becomes alarmed. Because that way, that's the path into the abyss. And it's an abyss and it's a complete unknown. And people would rather cling to something false but known than something unknown. And this is why some of the religious faiths say things that are demonstrably false, but still people can believe them as if they're true because it gives them something to hold on to. Because remember, we come to this plane without a manual of what this plane is or our role in this plane, and neither have any of the other people that have ever been on this plane actually come here with a manual. When people have written quotes of prophets, or when people have been prophets and have had visions and basically prophesied the future and been correct, even those guys didn't have a manual. They were just reporting what they were experiencing. So please start seeing the globelings as less enemy and more confused person. I had this idea just recently. I thought, hey, wouldn't it be good if whenever there was warmongering going on, and this idea, by the way, was proposed by Arthur C. Clarke, whenever there was more warmongering going on between nations, okay, Arthur C. Clarke said in Songs of Distant Earth that the children of, or the offspring, they weren't necessarily young, very young, they weren't pre-adolescent, the offspring of influential characters from the West would secretly travel to the East if the East was being targeted for war. And they would then crop up in the East and say, hey, Mummy and Daddy, I'm here, acting as a human shield. Okay? And people tried doing this with the war against Saddam Hussein. People went to Baghdad, hey, we're here, don't bomb Baghdad because we're acting as a human shield. And they did that of their own volition. Recently, don't ask me why, but I was thinking, hey, wouldn't it be great if whenever there were rumours of war, the habit of humans was to go, right, so let's see, all of the people who would benefit from war, from these nations, and all of the people that would benefit from war from those nations, the enemy, the adversaries, instead of killing them all or imprisoning them, let's do an exchange. Let's just do an exchange. Send these guys to spend a couple of months with those guys, the enemies, and have these enemies spend a couple of months with us. And what would happen? What would happen? This is what would happen. The enemies would arrive here. Suddenly, if it was Britain, suddenly all of the British people around them would behave very nicely to them so that they wouldn't wage war against us. And the same would be happening in North Korea, let's say. All the North Koreans would be really nice. And philosophers might say, oh, it's an artificial niceness. They're only being nice to try to coax people into not going to war. They'd be like, well, isn't that a negative thing? Anyway, it's just a thought I had. I thought I'd share it. Right, so let me see what's going on. Wait. Let's see. Okay, so Angel Fire. Think of this, okay? If the latitudes are curved, like I drew them on my map, then the Milky Way across our skies could be the separation between yin and yang. Okay, just thought I'd throw that in there. Right, folks, that's it. I've got messages coming on my phone. Could be from my daughter. So I'm going to bail. And thank you all very much for joining me. Stop seeing Groblings as enemies. They're human beings. Okay, and they didn't choose. Now, some of them are deceitful. Some of them are corrupt. Of course, but there's flat earthers that are like that too. Just if you're going to find enemies, make sure that they're worthwhile. Not just somebody who has a certain opinion. If somebody has the opinion that the earth is a globe, say, okay, how do you treat your children? Oh, how do you treat people around you? Oh, okay, then you're not my enemy. Okay, that's it. I will see you all later. Bye, folks.